hey, we're gonna kick it off. That's what we're gonna do. Hey everybody, Deb and Kate is here. I'm John. I think we established that. Edible Portland. We are here at Vinovate today, and we're going to talk about some of the Ambar wines and some of the things that kind of go down. But we're also just going to talk a little bit, maybe pose a couple questions on just, Chardonnay and sparkling wine. That's your jam.
Oh, God.
And I mean, it's magical, y'all.
Yes.
Truly.
It is.
There is, the people who say I don't like Chardonnay, I'm like, well, you've never had the right one or a good one.
That's true.
It's one of the most widely planted grapes on the planet and one of the most widely abused grapes on the planet.
Yeah.
And oak and Chardonnay can be friends.
I felt like when I learned about Kate Payne Brown, that I just need to always keep track of her because that's the Chardonnay.
Yeah.
I love Chardonnay. I've been drinking it since it was in Napa when it was heavily
those guys in the
wooded
80s.
and all that. But I learned your palate can grow.
It's true. I think there's room for all types of Chardonnay, and I think that's what makes the grapes so interesting, is that it does take on a lot of different personalities. And I think your tastes evolve. We're humans.
Sure.
It's going to evolve, and I think if you first start drinking a Chardonnay, that it's that typical riper, kind of heavier on the oak, that might end up being your gateway Chardonnay. And your gateway. And you might then kind of decide that other Chardonnays that are a little bit more expressive of the land and the place that they're from, then you might not be quite as shy with when trying them. So, what is great about Chardonnay is that it can take many shapes, many shapes, right? And so, whether it be stainless steel or we'll have a concrete fermented Chardonnay coming out, all of those vessels really inform what the finished wine is going to be.
100%.
And I think that's what makes Chardonnay very exciting, right?
I think so too.
And it's one of those few varietals that can be sparkling. It can be, a still wine. It could even be a sweeter wine. Right?
An orange wine,
Yeah,
an amber wine.
Right? There's so many personalities.
Absolutely.
And so many iterations of Chardonnay. And I think from a winemaking perspective, getting the opportunity to think about that provides a greater space for creativity.
Yeah, and it's sometimes you hear the term in the wine world a lot. Well, even obviously in the culinary world, spice in the spice box, or the tools in the toolbox. And with your experience and just the clear passion for it, when each year obviously is its own moving target, right? This is Mother Nature. This is agriculture we're talking about, that it just shines through the appreciation that you have for it. It comes through with all of that. And 24 it sounds like for Oregon you guys got some nice things to work with this year, or
it was a magical year.
Not a lot of work has to be done.
I think it was a really nice year. It reminded me a lot of 2008 in this vintage where we could slowly bring in the wines and think, maybe just pick this block right here. We have time. It's gonna be great. And I really appreciated it about that. We had a very cool August, and so generally in August, the east winds start coming in, and the acidity starts. The temperature increases, the acidity starts dropping, and we start, setting plans in motion. And this year, despite continually kind of dancing around the vineyard, being like, "Are we ready? Are we ready?" And you're like, "Oh, it's not." Okay, I'm going to remind myself of this time when we didn't have the same sense of urgency that we certainly had in other vintages. Right. And I think, to your point, every vintage is different. There is a reverence that you have to consider. And I think that's true with all wines and not just with Chardonnay. I'd like to think that, everything gets, the attention that it deserves. That comes along with really spending time in the vineyard and being thoughtful on how you want to, being thoughtful on your roadmap, being thoughtful on the wines that you want to create.
And you having the experience with, obviously the different vineyards around, not just here in the Dundee Hills, obviously, but around throughout the valley. And your experience here in the valley, also, those little microclimates of where does it get less rain? Where is it warmer? Where is it this? We are in some red Jory soil that makes Dundee Hills so famous. Also you worked and still know of and work with the more marine, sediment rings and the things that happen there. It's just, again, the spice in the spice box, tools in the toolbox, and then the vintage that comes in. But having that, I think it just really shows and gives you that opportunity to have that blank canvas and then let that talk to you.
Right. Right. I think, and it comes with perspective, right? And experience and age, right? I want to, and I think there's something really comforting now at this point in my career where you can not be so reactionary. Right?
Wisdom.
It's true. It's hard to say that, I think.
Yes.
When you're like, there are a lot of days I don't feel very wise, but I think slowing down and being thoughtful and taking a moment to kind of see where you want to go. And I think this vintage really allowed for that. That doesn't happen every vintage.
No.
I think that's what made 24 very remarkable. And I think it's going to be one of these vintages that we talk about for a long time. I think I was saying this during harvest. It's like, these are the harvests that when we talk about Oregon, this is the definition of it, right? This is the definition of what we describe when we talk about how special Oregon is, and how lucky that we get to experience it this harvest.
Right.
So, and it's not just like a platitude. Like there's something really wonderful about these cooler, spread out, spaced out harvests that really make for just wonderfully energetic wines.
Yeah.
Well, and having that opportunity, going into, the barrel program, or even when the fruit comes in and just spending that time to let the grapes, and, we'll jump right into that. But the time taken to work with each, to let it kind of have that, the slow steep or the slow rest or, what's going to happen. And it is important. Just like if one is making something in the kitchen, the soup's always better the next day. The chili's always better in 3 days, or the cassoulet, or whatever it may be. And there's a reason for that. That slow and low really. Yeah. First gear does really win the race.
It's consistent.
It's consistent.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting to me to think that in the future, there'll be people who will go into wineries in Oregon and say, do you have anything from 24s? Or, those things that, or it could get drank out immediately. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, I just think like the way we look for older wines, vintages sometimes, to think about, somebody's going to be thinking about this year.
Yeah. I absolutely. I think people are going to recognize what a special vintage it is, and will definitely seek it out. And I think about that often, especially if I'm reaching towards a wine that is a bit older, and one that I've made that you're like, oh, I can remember everything that happened in that moment, and everything that happened, everybody I worked with.
Wow.
And it's how you catalog time and a place, and I think wine is a perfect reflection of that. Right? You get that from each vintage. You get this sense of time and place, and for instance, you can 24 is still fresh in our brains, but certainly in those other vintages where I can tell you the weather, I can tell you what happened, and so that all comes rushing back, and that experience and everything that happened comes back in those senses when you taste a bottle of wine. So it is this full experience. And I was talking about this with some friends that have a restaurant in Portland, and how wine really, it's a food group, it's a part of a meal.
Yes.
And how wine is meant to be enjoyed and talked about and contribute to the experience. And so in many cultures, that's normal.
Yeah,
right?
The big table, the hunks of bread, and just let's do this together.
Yeah.
Just seeing it as that's the way it is. That's what we do.
Right.
When we have dinner. Yeah. Even the little kids get some watered down sometimes.
That's how I was raised.
Yeah, exactly.
And it turned out all right. But without, my family wasn't in wine, right? It was just part of this dining culture.
Yeah.
Whether it was at home or wherever, we sat down for a meal and you had a meal. And food and wine were tied together, and it was just what you did. And so I think that sometimes gets lost as we get busy, right? And it's a good reminder to, and I try to tell my kids that all the time. No, we're going to sit together.
We're going to sit together. It's
Well,
going to happen.
And the way that, okay, I'll talk from, my age, the way that we are rushing around looking for the next best thing all the time,
Right.
wine takes a different kind of knowledge, but experience. Wine takes a different, you're not looking for, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there, no, I'm going to go look at this because this was something that was produced by nature, and I want to participate in it with the nature. I know it's corny, but I always say that wine is the song that the earth sings.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful.
And it's way underappreciated.
I don't know. I think it is appreciated, but it is, to your point, maybe appreciated by a smaller focus group.
As
As
I agree
opposed
with
to this centralized part of a meal, or this, this extension of your meal of sorts, which it used to be. And it is in a lot of other cultures. I think, to your point with wine, the process is slower, right? And I think there's some barriers for this idea of that it can be intimidating and that people feel that they should know more. But I like to think that you should really drink what you like, include it if it's like a buttery oaky Chardonnay.
Right. That's what you like.
Because that's your gateway.
That's your gateway.
I'm gonna have a headache, but yes, go ahead.
But that might lead some awareness later.
Yeah. And I know that, and John, you have to remind me the name exactly, but I was reading that one of the top champagne growers in France looked at what they had from this year and said, we're not going to make wine this year.
Oh, really? I'm not surprised. It was a really challenging
Well, in
vintage.
some other regions,
Yeah.
even throughout Burgundy and down south in the
Yeah.
Jura, they just said no.
Yeah.
Just no. They've got some real issues there. And Burgundy too. So, what we know as white and red Burgundy, by definition, though there are a few other things planted there, but mainly Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, respectively, to red and white. What we know as the actual DNA of red or white Burgundy could be a very different grape here soon. They are working on trying to get, we're talking centuries of, and this isn't like trying to change laws necessarily. This is, or just the rules of agriculture. This is decree by,
They had so much rain and
so many issues.
So many issues this year that really just compounded each other. And so, that's the thing with agriculture too, and a changing climate. We have to be, there are going to be those vintages that are more challenging.
Sure.
And I think that's why when you have such a beautiful vintage like 2024, that they should be celebrated, right?
Should be celebrated, and certainly, you know, for you working with the Ambar fruit and having, you know, somehow that plot had never been planted to anything. So here was just this wonderful raw situation to work with, and in a great area of the Dundee Hills, you know, to bring in the different characteristics, and you know, and then again, obviously applying the regenerative organic certification all the way through, not just from the species of the plants, but the people in it, you know, taking and thinking about it as a full community. But having an opportunity that this vineyard was found, or what was to be this vineyard was found, and we hear the reports of how things are getting a little more hot and difficult to our brothers and sisters down there south of our state line border, and you know, so it's like, oh, so we're gonna be making, you know, Zinfandel in Canada soon. I'm like, yeah, but then Canada froze this year, which meant some help came in. Came in to keep their lights on and to keep their community, those wine businesses going. And like, let's work with each other. We're in this industry together.
Right. I think we're gonna see. I think the Willamette Valley is fairly well insulated because it has a lot of diversity to the region. It's a pretty big region with lots of different aspects. I think that you know, people are experimenting with different grapes, but people are also experimenting with different rootstocks and different aspects on what was previously thought to be unplantable space. And so Ambar is on the north side of the Dundee Hills, and you know, there's a reason why there's this new kind of generation of plantings on the side. It's because it's a great place to have plantings, especially in a warming climate. And so it helps buffer kind of those fluctuations because it's keeping these wines really bright and beautiful and helping to retain the acidity, even from some of our friends that are just over the hill, where they're getting a little bit more heat units and a little bit more ripeness. And so not that that is bad, but it's not what, you know, what they thought of when they first planted those vineyards. And so it's really interesting to kind of be on this next wave of the Dundee Hills. And so you get those still, some of the very similar like threads throughout the Dundee Hills in terms of characteristics. But because it's cooler over here, we get just a little bit more acidity and a little bit more kind of tension to the wines.
That's
fantastic.
Cool. Do you work with any other white grapes?
For Ambar, no, not at the moment. No.
I just was curious. I mean, all I've ever had is your wonderful Chardonnays, but I thought, well, I don't know. I'll ask.
We're making a sparkling, right? So we're making a few different sparklings under Ambar's label. You know, playing around, thinking about, you know, wish lists and what we'd want to make. But right now, it's really we're making a Blanc de Blanc, a rosé, and there'll be a non-vintage for the sparkling coming online eventually. And then we have a still rosé, and then of course we'll have 3 Chardonnays. So I think it's a nice expression.
It is, and lots to choose from there. Absolutely,
and for yourself. And Dolores.
I know. So for
you do play with something a little different there.
I play with some, you know, Gouge Blanc, which is great. I mean, that could fill up another hour of our time because that's a really interesting varietal, and you know, it was first propagated on our Gouge's property in Burgundy in the 1930s. Brought over, you know, he recognized that his Pinot Noir was mutating, and so Pinot Noir in general is highly mutatable. And sometimes when you're walking a vineyard, and I've seen this with my own eyes, a cluster could be half red and half white. And so he recognized something special was happening on his property, and he cultivated that mutation over many decades. And so I am told in the early 90s, somebody took some cuttings and brought it here to the Willamette Valley. And so I have I haven't seen with my own eyes, but I have heard there are 3 acres of it here in the Willamette Valley. I get the gouge that I work with from an organic property in the Isla Amity. It's such an interesting kind of take on Pinot Blanc. It tends to have this minerality and brightness to it, holds its acidity pretty well. It's such a unique expression, and I love kind of the forethought that Henri Gouge had, right, in recognizing that this mutation was something that you should cultivate. And so, what kind of capriciously started as a project almost 10 years ago has, stayed small but true to its form. And so we've been making sparkling Pinot Gouge since 2015. Wow. So we'll have some Pinot Meunier coming online as well, sparkling, and then a couple other fun things coming online as well.
Cool. Can't
That's
wait.
so great.
Can't wait.
So, yeah.
Taste.
Yeah, taste.
Yeah.
Such a celebration of it all, too.
Yeah.
Of what?
Exactly.
Such a celebration of it all, too.
Oh, absolutely,
I mean,
such a
rosé
celebration.
every day, but bubbles, come on. I mean,
Well, I think winemaking, I think with anything, and I think winemaking in particular, but really any industry that you're in, you should approach it with some kind of exploration and curiosity, and that's what's going to keep you engaged and moving forward. I don't believe that winemaking is a recipe. I think that it's constantly, like us, we're evolving.
always
And
learning.
so I never believe in doing anything simply for dogma's sake.
Right.
And even if you try to take that route, you're going to be humbled by Mother Nature because
She's going to win.
Yeah, always.
She's going to win.
Always. And so trying to maintain that fluidity is really important kind of in my life, but certainly in my winemaking style.
You said a while ago about going into the vineyard and looking at the grapes and saying, are you ready yet? What's going on here? And what are some of the things you look for?
With Chardonnay or sparkling, I'm looking at kind of the overall, look of the clusters for sure. But the taste in these moments, especially for sparkling, it's not the most pleasant thing to experience because they're tart.
Oh, yeah.
And so you're looking for some flavors. You don't want them too green, but you don't want it, if it tastes, to me, overtly pleasing. I was like, oh, dang it, I've missed my mark, right?
Yeah, I hear you.
And so I'm looking for something that has that brightness. I mean, still tasting. Of course, I'll need a beer after, right?
Sure.
Something to cut all the acidity in my mouth. But I think that certainly for Chardonnay, again, looking for continuity of the cluster, but then also looking at the taste as well. But primarily for me, when I'm picking or making the picking decisions, I'm picking on the acidity of the wine.
Got it. Interesting.
It's that beautiful, collaboration and junction of the art, the science,
yes.
Mother Nature, all those things that come together that, and the different challenges that come with each year.
Yep.
You got one
Every
shot a year, right?
Yeah, one shot, 100%. So, and that's what makes it exciting.
It makes it exciting. And just such an educational platform for all, when we talk about those different style wines or even the choices that winemakers may make or vineyard managers, whoever it may be, it's subjective. It was, for me, a couple of decades, I will say it, into my wine career, my wine world, until a light came on that, people taste what they taste and smell what they smell, and it's subjective. And though you go through ages and stages and your own mental palate as well as your own aromatics and your own palate will change, or what you look for, what you want, or think that you want. I mean, there are no wrong answers. And it goes immediately back to what you were saying earlier. It's that mental memory palette as well. It is a full, why is this glass shaped like this? I mean, for those of us who are in this industry were like, hey, we have a whole story on this glass and why.
Right.
But, you know, some of the people watching this and going to be listening to this, you know, glasses do make a difference. And I you know,
Yeah,
it took me a while, but I got mom on it long ago.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it really does. And aromatics are so important to it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people don't
That's
realize
what it
that.
does
And
for
that's,
you.
for
Yeah.
me, Chardonnay is one of those grapes that
Yeah.
it's just like, okay.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I even want to drink this right now. I just want to go sit in the corner, you know, and like
No.
smell
I know, I was
it.
gonna
I don't
say.
know if I'm that patient.
Yeah, I know. It's so
Wow.
fun.
Did we talk about how you started in wine yet?
I think we did.
Okay.
When
When we were out a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
when we were
yeah,
up
we were talking
doing
up
the
at
sit-down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
doing
okay,
the sit-down
good.
stuff. Yeah.
I thought we had, but I was going to make sure we got that.
I think so.
I know you got stuff to do. You guys
Oh,
have
yeah.
some, you know, we don't want to take up too much of your time. And just thank you, Kate, for spending the time a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And letting us come over here to Innovate, because it's not just, you know, where Ambar is, but there are, you know, there are some great clients in here. There's some wonderful stuff happening.
There's a lot going on here, which
Is
is pretty exciting. And so, I mean, we're really excited for 2025 because it's going to be soon, right?
Oh,
And
hey,
so,
only a couple weeks away.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I know. But, I mean, it's always such a treat to spend time with you.
No,
And so,
yeah,
I mean,
likewise.
Yeah,
Likewise,
of
absolutely.
course. Like,
It's-
Yeah.
this is fun.
Anything you want to finish up with, or just
you think
like
people might want to hear from you about?
I don't know. I feel like we covered a lot. I think, you know, we hit the high notes, right?
we hit the high
Yeah.
notes?
24 is great vintage.
24 is a great vintage.
23s will
the
be coming
passion.
out in the near
Yeah.
future.
Looking forward to that.
And I think it's always wonderful to have adjacent vintages that are so different.
Yeah,
Right? And
yeah,
so-
it's fun
Some
stuff.
contrast.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
And so you don't have preference unless you have contrast.
Right.
Well, and I'm glad that you said that. I know we're getting ready to kind of wrap up here, but it's, you know, for me, one of the important things I found early on in my wine career, going out to the vineyard and being in the same place throughout different times of the year, or even in my cooperage days, being in this room, and as you do, you know, getting through the barrels at different times to see, you know, sometimes it's every couple of days, depending on how close or what's
Yeah.
going on. Sometimes it's like, okay, I don't need to come back to do that barrel or that rack right
Yeah.
now. But it's you know, having that opportunity to get that and know where things are, get that sense of place in the vineyard or here, and it's something that, you know, we've talked about. That, you know, we're gonna come out and kind of follow you guys
Yeah,
through
come
the
out and see us
year
all, you know, and
Yeah,
and
there's
do
I
it
mean,
because there's
it's cyclical,
It's
right?
cyclical.
Absolutely.
And so I think that also provides set context throughout the wine's life, and I think there's always these moments where you check in. You're like, okay,
sure.
This is changing in the glass.
I know
Yeah.
it just needs a little bit of time, but this was fun.
This
Thank
was
you.
fun. Awesome.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you, Kate.
Of course.
See you
Thanks,
again.
Deb.
Thank you, John.
Thank you to Dean, who's back there behind the camera.
Yeah.
And
Appreciate
thank
that.
you guys for listening. If you're just listening, thank you guys for watching. Thanks for picking up the magazine. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for doing all this stuff. Thanks for supporting, you know, our community, the wine
100%,
community, and what's
yeah.
going on here, and going on the ride with us. So
Yeah,
we'll see
thank
you out here. We'll see you
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah, grateful.
And remember, be in the water, y'all. Thank you.